This is the 18 Strong Podcast with Jeff Pellizzero, episode number 39.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast. I'm Jeff Pellizzero. I'm your host, golf fitness professional and physical therapist, and I want to thank you for joining me today. We've got a great guest, Dr. Brett Winchester, and he's going to talk about a part of the body that is very often overlooked in the golf swing. And when you're looking at physical fitness and keeping a healthy lifestyle, healthy body for your golf swing, we don't often talk about the foot and its role in the golf swing and how important it is. And so Brett's going to go into a lot of detail on exactly that, what the foot provides in the golf swing and how it really can be looked at as the base, obviously the base of your swing, moving from the ground up through the club. And we talk about several different things, some of those being the main dysfunctions of the foot and a couple things we need to look out for as people walking and playing in today's society and being on our feet all the time. Other things are the discussion of orthotics. Are they good? Are they bad? Should you have them? Shouldn't you have them? Depending on what's going on with your foot. And then we get into, what should you look for in a golf shoe? What are the different reasons why you want a more flexible shoe or a more rigid shoe, and which one's right for you? And what are some of the brands that Dr. Winchester recommends and has used, and what should you look for when you're going out shopping to get just that little extra piece that's going to hopefully help take your game to a little bit of the next level. So we're going to talk about all that stuff on the show coming up. If you are new to the 18 Strong Podcast, you have any questions about 18 Strong, head on over to 18strong.com. We've got tons of content over there, all kinds of podcasts, articles, and we're going to be coming out with a lot of new content in the near future, with some videos, a few more articles, but we're really going to start making a push towards the video side to give you guys, because this is such a fitness-based website and platform, we find that it's very helpful to give you usable content where you can see what we're doing, exercises, stretches, mobility things that are really going to help you in your golf game and really just help you move better, help your fitness level, help your strength, help your power, all that good stuff. And we figured video is the best way to get that stuff to you, along with interviewing some of the best in the game on the podcast. So don't forget to head on over to 18strong.com. There's a free gift over there, 5 yards in less than 5 minutes. It's the ebook that I put together for you. And again, we have some video coming out for that too. So hopefully you guys enjoy the podcast with Dr. Brett Winchester, and I'll catch you on the other side. All right, Dr. Brett Winchester, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
You bet. And all you 18 Strong golfers out there, we've got Dr. Brett Winchester from Winchester Spine and Sport, which you might recognize from way early in the podcast. We had Dr. Austin Panter on, who's also with Winchester Spine and Sport. Dr. Brett is the founder of Winchester Spine and Sport, and I wanted to bring him on to talk about something that I think is very untouched in the world of golf, especially for those that are not in the training world, the physical therapy world, the chiropractic world. But for the average golfer, the guy that just goes out and plays and practices, I think that a piece that's missing, Brett, is the foot. And so I want to talk a lot about the foot and its importance in the golf swing and our function and just daily life. But before we get into that stuff, I want to give the audience a little background on you. You're an international speaker, and as you were just talking before the call, you told me you just got back from a big trip, several different countries. I know you speak all over the States. So where were you, and what were you talking about? And give the listeners a little more background on you.
Yeah, so basically, besides private practice, I also on my weekends spend my time lecturing on an array of different topics. But one of my niches has definitely become the function of the foot and ankle. And so I also have a throwing consulting company that, and what's interesting, what we're starting to learn is even like with a throwing athlete or a pitcher, no matter what the athletic endeavor is, the function of the foot and ground reactive forces are paramount and very, very important. I think we're just kind of on the leading edge of starting to kind of realize just how important it is.
So before we jump into everything that's going on with the foot and the golf swing, tell us how you got involved in golf. How you guys at Winchester got into the sport of golf. I know you, like me, played soccer. And little fun fact: we most likely, since we're both in St. Louis, we most likely shared the soccer field at some point during our careers. We had to have. But
absolutely.
Give some background on you.
We always end up talking about soccer when we should be talking about golf.
I know. I try to steer towards soccer as much as I can, since that's where my original passion is. But no. So give the audience a little background on you, how you got involved in chiropractic, and your instruction at Logan Chiropractic here in St. Louis, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So as far as my golf career goes, I played high school golf at Lafayette High School. Was not a great golfer by any means, but enjoyed the sport. And then I would say over the last 15, 20 years, I've just kind of gone in and out of golf. But even when I've been out of golf, I've always been amazed at the ability to hit a golf ball. So even at times when I'm taking a break from the game, I'll always, if golf is on, I'm just kind of really intrigued by what makes the great golfers in the world and what they have that other people don't have. As far as the treatment of the golfer, obviously, just in private practice, you'll see your everyday golfer. And then over the last couple of years, we started to see some higher level golfers and professional golfers. And, then when I brought on, Dr. Panther, we really, at that point, he was really into golf. And, so we've really kind of been diving into it over the last, year or two. And, I think we're really kind of starting some new things and talking about some things in golf that, haven't been talked about before. So we're really kind of looking forward to the future of that.
Well, if you could kind of walk us through just very generally, again, we've got a lot of fitness professionals and trainers and coaches that listen to the podcast, but for the folks that are not in that world and are simply here for the love of golf and they want to get their fitness better, they want to make their game better, kind of walk us through what goes on in the golf swing with the foot, basically the general function and movements right from the get-go, and then we'll kind of dive in further from there.
Perfect. So, the thing that, you hear just people debate about quite a bit is just, when we line up to hit a golf shot, what should the alignment of the feet be? And it's kind of a difficult question because, if you read Ben Hogan's 5 Lessons book, he was pretty adamant in saying that for the most part, at least the right foot should be, perpendicular to the target line and things like that. And then as time's gone on, you'll hear other instructors kind of get away from that. But the right answer to the question is it depends. There's some different things with the hip joint and the knee that may allow for a little bit of external rotation of the foot. So maybe that's not the most important thing, but one thing I think we need to just lay a little bit of groundwork on the foot, which is what most people don't realize is the one foot is made up of 28 bones and 55 articulations or joints. So whenever we have a joint in our body, whether it's in our foot, our elbow, our spine, we obviously are designed to have movement. So we have a lot of spots in our foot, in a good functioning foot, that we want to have movement. And saying that, we also have a local or deep muscle system. So I'm sure everyone on your podcast is familiar with core muscles around the spine and other joints. Well, around the foot, we have the exact same thing. So we believe that tapping into these muscles is really, really important for a good golf swing. And it kind of leads us to some other debates on, the evolution of golf shoes and things like that. But to keep it simple, if you were talking about a right-handed golfer, one of the things you'll see in the top 1,000 players in the world is they take the club back as they start their backswing, their right foot will actually stay in a neutral position, or what we call in the foot world a pronated position, which is kind of a rolled in position of the foot. And what you see if you just go out to a golf course and you see recreational golfers, you'll see as they take the club back, you'll see the knee will be pushed outward and you'll see the foot go kind of in the high arch position. And once that occurs, you can now still hit a golf ball, but you're basically reliant on your whole upper body to hit a golf swing. And you can no longer tap into some of the, the ground reactive forces and some of the other things that we use to hit a golf ball far or well. So that's like the main tenet, and so much so, every day I'm amazed at the famous golf instructor, Harvey Pinnock, who wrote the Little Red Book of Golf.
Mm-hmm.
And what he was such a master at was like simple cues. So, and what he used to tell his golfers was, when you take the club back, I want you to put a little bit of pressure underneath your right heel. And what that does is, if anyone's can stand up, to listen to this and feel it, it forces that foot to stay home. But more importantly, it keeps the knee and the hip to stay home. So basically, if you do it right, as you pull the club back in your backswing, you can literally feel all the muscles in the back of your right hip start to turn on if you can maintain that position. It's like if we were going to have a long drive contest and we said, hey, you can put a towel under the outside part of your right foot in your backswing if you want to do it. Would you take that option? And the answer is absolutely yes. You will hit the ball further typically when you have your foot pitched in that position. So that is one of the main tenets we see with all the great golfers, is they're able to keep that foot in that position. And then the other thing it allows it to do is allows the hip to kind of stay home as the shoulders are rotating faster and further than the pelvis, which I know there's some debate on the X factor, but if we are talking about the X factor, it allows those muscles to be wound up in the golf swing. So kind of said another way, everything starts with the feet in the golf swing, obviously. And if we're still talking about that right foot, what you'll see is as they take the club back, really good players all say the same thing. It almost feels like you're screwing your foot into the ground. I think it's the best way I've ever heard it described for a layperson to feel it in their own body. So when we have that screwing into the foot, we have activation of all those core muscles of the foot. And that is what we feel is one of the main important tenets of the golf swing. And then as we're swinging through the other part of the golf swing, the left foot is also really an interesting thing to study, because you'll see a lot of torque is produced at the left foot and at the left hip, obviously, when we're making contact with the golf ball. And you'll see the longer we can stay at home, if you will, the more torque we can create in the left hip, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people think that, like, a lot of right-handed golfers are tendent to like left hip replacements and left labral hip injuries because of that one thing. And you'll see there's so much torque produced there that the left foot isn't able to do exactly what it should do in the golf swing. You'll see the left foot sometimes kick out as we're swinging through the golf ball. A guy like Ernie Els is a good example of that. If you watch him, you'll see that left foot as he's swinging through, you finally build up so much torque that the foot has to release. So in a nutshell, those are kind of the things that we look for, in the golf swing with the feet.
Yeah, there's a couple guys on tour that I think of when I'm thinking footwork, and like Patrick Reed, you see his left foot turn out a lot, or Bubba Watson even comes off of both feet. What's your take on that?
This new age of long hitting golfers, it's kind of, I think the verdict's still out. I think you're always going to have your freaks and your genetic just wonders of the world who can, pull that off. I think what's a more important question to ask is that a teachable model? If we're going out and we're teaching a 10-year-old how to hit a golf ball, is that the way that we would, teach them to hit a golf ball? So, and the answer, of course, like in Bubba's example, is probably not. But I think we can all learn from that. But I think it just kind of reinforces the importance of the feet, though, of these new long hitters. Rory's another good example. They literally look like they're jumping out of their shoes as they're contacting the golf ball. So what's not really talked about, we talk a lot about like the foot in golf, but I think the ground reactive forces and the energy taken off the ground, we really look at this for throwing and pitching, but I think we find the same exact thing with hitting a golf ball or like with you, Jeff, kicking a soccer ball. So, those ground reactive forces and how we're able to use those ground reactive forces, transferring up through our legs, through our core, through our hips, through our shoulders, and then, of course, out the implement of the golf swing. It all starts with the ground. And whenever we can use the ground and ground reactive forces, obviously we have greater output. So
Yeah, when you watch
very, very important.
When you watch a guy like Rory hit the ball, I mean, you can just see, if you slow motion his swing, you can see the power that he's first kind of storing up when he goes into his backswing, and then you see him coming, almost getting into that squat position, and then he comes into almost a full extension on that back leg and really uses the ground. And I mean, we saw this last weekend where he's just driving the ball ridiculously far and using that ground to push off of.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was out, I think I told you before we got started here at the match play out in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and I was fortunate enough, I was right there. I got to just watch him hit at the range, and exactly what you said, and like his warm-up drill, I mean, it's almost like, in a way, like before he shoots, he's almost like doing a little dance with his feet, like before he, initiates the golf swing, which if you notice like pre-swing routines, you see it a lot across a lot of different golfers. It's almost like, I forget, Steve Elkington, he used to say, like, it's almost like you're dancing your way into the golf shot kind of. So, Rory, I mean, he's just another, complete freak of nature as far as this new generation of ball strikers that, we just are, blessed to watch and witness.
So when you're in the clinic and you're working with, as you mentioned, you work with everybody from general population up to the touring pros. What are some of the more common problems that you see with people's feet when they come in, and this, your everyday average Joe to the pros? But what are some of the things that are very common that you see and that can be corrected? And then maybe we can go into some of the ways that people can work on that stuff.
Yeah, I'd say like just not even with golfers, but we'll include golfers in what I'm about to tell you. But we have two major problems with foot and foot dysfunction right now in the world. And those two problems are man-made surfaces, man-made shoes. So basically for the first, for the time we're a baby, we basically shove our feet into containers we call shoes, and we walk around on man-made surfaces. So what ends up happening is our feet are basically neurologically dying. So all the muscles in your feet and all the joints in your feet, when your foot hits the ground, all of that information goes to your brain, which the brain makes a decision on how we're going to stabilize our foot, our joints, and things like that. So when that message is altered or off, you can still do your activity, but it's just not quite at the same level. So if we looked at like that function alone, you'll see the best people in the world at whatever they're doing, they have amazing proprioception. So proprioception is kind of a fancy word, but to define it another way, it's basically knowing where your joints are in time and space. So one of my colleagues from Europe, he works extensively with Jaromir Jagr, who's a professional hockey player, is actually still playing well into his 40s. And they did a little drill with him. And what they did is they took 5 hockey sticks, and basically they were all 1 millimeter difference. And every time Jaromir Jagr could go stick handle, come back to the boards and line up the sticks from shortest to longest, and they were only 1 millimeter off.
Wow.
So like for you and I, Jeff, to do that, like the hockey stick would have to be, 200 millimeters difference before you and I could like have that perception. Or like a hockey player, like they'll say like the guys in the NHL, like they'll travel with literally 20 different people that can sharpen their skates, because at that high of a level, they have such awesome acuity and proprioception that if anything is just slightly off, they can pick up on it in a second. And that's why, like in the PGA guys and stuff, they get real finicky with just about everything. The guy who treats Tiger, he told us a story where that when Tiger could be at the range, Nike would send him his clubs, and Tiger would be like, this shaft is too long. And the guy looks at the box and is like, no, it's the right length or whatever. So anyways, the club rep would take the club head off, measure it, and sure enough, Tiger would be right. It'd be like 1 millimeter off. But like when you're performing at that high of a level, those are the things that become really, really important. The difference is kind of the devil's in the details. Now the thing that I always really wonder about golf is if you have a 10-year-old who's an average golfer, so he's not the best in the world, he's just an average golfer, and you give him the right cueing, you give him the right imagery for the brain, and you give them the right environment to thrive, where can we take them? I mean, I think that's the $1 million question. In talking to some of the head guys at TPI, I asked them one time, I said, the players that you're working with, have any of these people been average golfers that just turned into, one of the best in the world? And they said no. They said basically everyone who's, the top 50 player in the world, they were great from the beginning. However, they might have gotten a late start. Like there's a lot of good examples of people who, picked up a club at 18 and then they were good. But I think what, you and I, Jeff, I think the thing that keeps us up at night would be, what can we do with that average golfer? What's the ceiling on that? What is the capacity? Where can we take them? And because of the research now in neuroplasticity, I really believe, you're going to have some genetic limitations, but I really, really believe in my heart that like we could take someone a very, very long way, even if they're not like a genetically great gifted golfer. And, it's amazing to see some of the guys on tour. God love them, but they're not all, athletic specimens. So, it's just really, really interesting to see the different gifts of the different golfers and what makes them, be able to hit a golf ball well.
Yeah, it's interesting. You look at all the athletes here in the United States and in the world, really, but especially here in the States where, we know that some of the most athletically gifted individuals tend to gravitate towards other sports. You look at, some of the athleticism in football and the NBA. Those guys are incredible athletes. And you kind of wonder what if those guys were gravitated towards golf or whatever sport it might be. How good would they be? Would that guy who's a fantastic athlete in the NBA, if he were groomed from a young age to be a golfer, would he also be a world-class golfer?
I know that's such a good question, Jeff. I'll say this: the one sport I've seen crossover unbelievable, and I know you've worked a lot at your facility with hockey players, but is hockey players always make good strikers of a golf ball. They may not be great golfers because there's a lot that goes, into, shooting a good score in golf. But as far as like just ball striking, two guys I saw hit a golf ball that just absolutely floored me was Al McInnes and Brett Hall. Those two guys could explode a golf ball better than even the guys on the tour. It's just absolutely amazing. But it's, it's kind of similar motions. The other thing, when they do those pro-ams, it's always kind of interesting to see like who makes good golfers. And what you'll see, like a guy like Tom Glavine or Rick Rhoden, those guys, pitchers, a lot of times, they make good golfers and have good short games in golf. So I'm always kind of really sort of intrigued by like how well golf crosses over into other sports. So yeah, it's really, really fascinating to see, what other sports they could or could not be good at. I can look at a lot of guys on the tour and I could probably tell you what they're not going to be good at, but in saying that, you look at a guy like Wayne Gretzky, who, by the way, can hit a golf ball. He shows up to Edmonton. He's 18 years old. He weighs 135 pounds. And he can only bench 135 pounds one time. And if they, checked his agility, they checked his vertical, they did a 10 or 40-yard dash and some plyometric testing, you'd see he would have just done horrible on all of those tests. So, but it reinforces, how the end of that story goes, where he basically, rewrote all the scoring records in NHL. So, there's a lot of intangibles to being the best in the world at what you do, and they're not always raw athleticism, but I still think it's worth investigating. So, if you had a PGA guy show up at your clinic tomorrow, I would still want to know, the athleticism, like if we did run them out in a 10 or 40, or check their vertical, just out of curiosity, where are they there? Because that might have implications for some of the things that we may do for training.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely makes a difference in, what they can and can't do and where you start them with their training. And, some guys naturally know how to, activate different parts of their body, or they have some of that proprioception, and it really makes a difference in what level you start them at. But let's get back to the foot a little bit. I don't want to get too far off topic because we could talk about that all day with the athleticism. But so going back to the feet, what are some of the things that people can do at home in order to work on, or what are some of the things that they need to look at and find out if, hey, are my feet in good shape? You know, how do I know if I have some of these issues that are going to impact my golf swing?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the first thing is for a lay person would be, do you have pain in your feet? So what most people don't realize, especially if you're going to walk a golf course, you're going to, whatever forces you have going through your feet to hit a golf ball in a round, but you're also walking on average 6 to 7 to 8 miles, depending on the course. So the whole other side of this is not only do you need your feet to function well for your golf swing, but you also need to be able to go on an 8-mile walk and not have, pain or discomfort. So, and that's what you'll see. I mean, those who are out there listening who treat recreational golfers, I mean, typically they deal with foot problems in the golfer because of all the walking that's involved with golf. So that is an important point. One thing too to really consider is if you're in quiet stance, which means you're just standing on your 2 feet, what is your interface with the ground? So what we like to see is what's called a tripod. So, if you looked at the bottom of your foot, so where the center point of your heel is, and then if you looked at about where your first toe starts and your fifth toe starts, you basically should be standing on 3 points of support. So that's a real important question to ask, I think, just from the beginning on anybody is, do they preserve that tripod or are they overloading one of the, posts on that tripod? Mm-hmm. The other real important thing is just your ability to balance. So, I mean, if I had one thing to see how well your foot's functioning in society, I would say, let's check a one-leg balance test. So, if somebody stands, usually we do it the eyes open first. So we have their eyes open. We see if they can stand 15 seconds on one leg. Then we close their eyes and we see the strategy that they choose to stand on, because sometimes it's not the right strategy. But we want to see, do they have the ability to balance with their eyes closed for 15 seconds? And by closing the eyes, we take away their ability to cheat, which is their eyesight. So if people have really poor proprioception in their feet, usually you'll see that they have really good visual acuity to help make up for it with the vision system. So obviously, if we're performing at a very high level in golf, we would love to have great proprioception, which means you could stand easily on 15 seconds with your eyes closed, and that would be, of course, on both feet. So if you swing a golf club, and I mean, this is also debatable. I've seen, some different varying things on this, but really good golfers, I mean, the key to a good golf swing is weight transfer. So if you're transferring your weight to your right foot on a right-handed golfer as you take the club back, the name of the game in golf is transferring your weight without shifting your pelvis, of course. So if we have a bird's eye view of, all the great players, you'll see that we have rotation of the pelvis or transverse plane rotation. We don't have much sliding. So if we go to a local golf course in St. Louis, we'll see the fatal flaw that, most amateur players make or recreational players make is they have to slide through the hitting zone instead of rotate the pelvis. So the name of the game is being able to transfer your weight without shifting your pelvis side to side. I mean, that's the huge name of the game, and that is definitely easier said than done. So that is, I'd say, of anything, that's the one thing that you'll see, one of the main differences between a good golfer and a bad golfer. So also a two-legged squat, I think, Jeff, is really good. So, I mean, if we have a patient the first thing we do is we just want to see their strategy for squatting. So we don't give them a bunch of rules. We just want to say, put your feet shoulder width apart, keep your toes forward. Let me see how you would choose to descend into a squat. And that's really our first time we really get to notice whether or not their ankle joint is what we call dorsiflexion or being able to bend correctly. So if you watch golf requires dorsiflexion in both foot and ankle, or to the layperson, I would just say ankle movement. And so I think the two-legged squat is a really good way to check that. I mean, if you want to try it at home, you should be able to, bottom out a squat and have your heels stay on the ground and keep your toes facing forward. So when we can't do that, there's, a couple reasons why. One is we have, blocked joints of the foot or the ankle. And the other option is we have a really tight gastroc soleus, which is your calf muscle, basically. So those are, I think, some key links to look for in the golf swing. In the clinic, we also just look at their gait eval, so we watch them walk. So that's going to be kind of hard for a layperson to do. But if you end up in the right office, like your office, then I think definitely watching them walk is really also a good test to see what the foot's doing. So those are the main functional tests that we use for the foot in the golf swing.
Yeah, I would say that the dorsiflexion, or for the layperson, basically bending your foot up towards your shin. I see so much limitation there when walking somebody through a squat test, and they don't even realize it. They don't realize that their ankles are tight, and that can impact their golf swing. And because it's not such a glaring movement that happens in your swing, most people don't really understand its importance. But what are some ways that people can work on? I know that if it's an actual joint restriction where it's, basically the bones are not gliding the way they need to glide, that's a little harder for somebody to work on their own. There are ways, but what if it is the calf muscles, the gastrocs? What are some basic things that they can do at home to start working on this stuff?
Yeah, what I would recommend, and just to reference it, because it's where I got it 15 years ago, and I know you've heard of him, Jeff, but there's a physical therapist out of Michigan named Gary Gray, and he became famous for what's called a triplanar calf stretch. So all the listeners out there, I think if you just Googled triplanar calf stretch, you'll definitely find it. And basically, you set yourself up like you're doing a traditional runner stretch, but one of the key differences is Gary was really big on promoting being able to stretch the calf in a bunch of different planes besides just forward. So if you see a typical running stretch, you'll see people, they'll kind of take their nose to the wall, but we really believe that the calf should be stretched in all three planes just because it's got two heads and because of the fiber orientation. And then I would take it one step further and say, we always try to ask ourselves why the calf is so tight and restricted. And a lot of times what we'll find is the deep core muscles of the foot have kind of been inhibited or shut down. So to compensate for that, we overuse the bigger muscles. We see the same thing everywhere else in the body. So if your core muscles are really weak in your lumbar spine or your low back, then you'll overuse the more superficial paraspinal muscles to try to, compensate or make up for that stability. So it's kind of a twofold thing that we try to do. We try to restore all the movement of the restricted joint, then we try to teach the brain how to activate the foot muscles correctly.
Would you use any kind of like foam roller type stuff or anything where they would roll like the bottom of their foot or anything like that?
So, we will use that on occasion. I don't think that's a horrible thing. Ironically too, a golf ball can sometimes help with that. If we're dealing with the plantar, fascia case or things like that. Our model that we practice with, typically, we're going to teach them how to recover mobility. And then after that, we usually finish with, some stability type exercise. My experience has been that people are so starved for foot activation exercises. So we spend a lot of time kind of going through that. Just so the listeners know, if you Googled short foot exercises, that will get you in the ballpark. I don't 100% agree with all the ideas of a short foot, but I think it's a great start for people to be able to start to, just kind of learn and figure out how to start to activate those real deep muscles of the foot.
Well, I'll tell you what, since the 18 Strong website is getting ready to launch some YouTube videos and things like that, maybe we'll have to come down to your clinic and we can go through and shoot some videos for the listeners, and that way they can get a better idea of some of these different exercises and activities, if that's cool with you and Dr. Panter.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think too, like the video is so helpful. That's where YouTube is obviously so beneficial. So if you just simply typed in on YouTube short foot exercises or foot doming exercises or triplanar calf stretches, you're gonna get yourself there. But yeah, of course, it would be awesome to to have that on your website would be really awesome.
Perfect. I'll definitely link up those different videos in the show notes so everybody can go there. But then, yeah, we'll put that on the calendar and get down there and shoot some videos. All right, let's talk a little golf shoes. Well, actually, before we talk golf shoes, I know a lot of people out there have had or have been told to get orthotics. Orthotics, good, bad, yay, nay? What are your thoughts?
Oh man, that is.
I know we're opening a big box here.
But I hate to use the cop-out answer. It depends on the case, but I would say for every pair of orthotics that we put in a shoe, we probably take out 10, just to give you an idea. So we believe that in the right case, orthotics can be beneficial. But they can also be harmful. So we don't believe that everyone should have an orthotic. And we have to be careful because our footwear can also act like an orthotic. So, a classic example is a running shoe. I mean, those are the listeners who are runners. I mean, if you, for example, have, a pronation problem with running, you can go to the running store and get a motion control shoe. So that can be good, that can be bad, depending on the case. But in our office, we use orthotics for people who basically have structural deformity of their feet. And when we see that, then we oftentimes will recommend an orthotic, which quite honestly, it's not that common. Another approach is we try the conservative approach. We try to activate the muscles, get the joints moving to the foot, see where we are. And if we haven't made a big splash in the case, then we can always go to orthotics. But you will hear more times than not in a sport like golf or in soccer also, people lose their touch and their feel when they have their foot in orthotics sometimes. So we have to be very, very careful. The other thing is you'll see like a lot of orthotics are made from an acrylic substance. So there might be some padding on top or some EVA, but the inner core of the orthotic is acrylic or hard plastic. So it's very unforgiving. So, it can take away some of the sensation that we'd like that we were talking about before with the interface of the foot to the ground with function. So.
Awesome. So kind of along those same lines, let's talk about golf shoes a little bit. What are things that we should be looking for in golf shoes? I know there's a big movement towards some of the more loafer style, the kind more of a casual kind of a shoe, but then also you've got, like the new FootJoys, the DNAs that are basically some pretty heavy duty. It looks like they have a ton of support in them. Where do we go? What should we be looking for when we're looking for a golf shoe?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the old adage if the shoe fits, wears it. I mean, one of the main things I always say with all my athletes is, first of all, when we're talking footwear, are you happy with the shoe? For example, if someone comes into me and they say, man, I love these shoes. Let's just say I don't agree with, something about them. Well, then if I put my shoe that I would recommend into them, they're like, man, this just doesn't feel right. We have a huge disconnect and a problem. So like one of the first real elementary things I ask them is, are you happy with the shoe? Is it giving you any problems? Or do you have any questions about, what the shoe's doing for you? And golf shoes are really, really kind of an interesting thing because we're starting to see like the evolution that we saw with the running shoe now in the golf world. So, and it's funny, and you see the same thing with other sports too. I'm seeing the same thing with baseball. So we're slowly starting to see what we, started to talk about 10 years ago in the world of running. And now we're starting to talk about it in golf. And I mean, just like in running where, we have patients every day ask us, should I be running barefoot? And again, that's a difficult question because you have, we were designed to be obviously out running through a grass savanna with nothing on our foot. That is true. But now runners, they're not running in a grass savanna. They're out running on asphalt and pavement. So now you take the shoe off, you no longer have a buffer. So, I mean, that's not always the right answer, So as far as the golf, as far as the history of golf shoes, it's really kind of an interesting history. It all started in 1857 where in the golfer's manuals, the first time they spoke of it in Europe, where they basically attached small nails to the bottom of the shoe. So they noticed that if they had the nails in the shoe when they were swinging the golf club, they were able to maintain the feet obviously in a position. And when they were able to do that, they could hit a golf ball better. And then 1891, I think, was the first time they actually started to screw the spikes in. Like, I know in our lifetime, Jeff, we both had those golf shoes like in the 80s and the low 90s. And then, anyways, we kind of got the more modern golf shoe. Spalding was the first one to make what was called the Saddle Oxford. That was 1906, which now we still see kind of that design in the 21st century golf shoe. And in the 1980s was really the first time that we start to see the golf shoe kind of transform itself from the look of like a business shoe, literally, like the old golf shoes literally look like dress shoes. In the 1980s was the first time we started to see the golf shoe kind of look more like an athletic shoe or a running shoe, if you will. And then in the 1990s, of course, we went to the non-metal spikes. And one of the main reasons for that, ironically, was to save the greens and to save the clubhouse floors. When they made that transition, it was interesting to see all the kind of pushback from it, because I had one of the top lumbar spine or preeminent lumbar spine researchers in the world. He said when he would talk to PGA golfers, and he said, if I gave you an option to wear 10-inch spikes, would you take it? And they all say yes. So it was kind of an interesting dilemma. You know, like they like, obviously, to have their feet secured, and the reason is because of the production of torque.
Right. So
anyways, so the modern, so now we're to the point that we're asking the same questions that we are with any other type of footwear. So should we have more of a minimalist type shoe? And when I say minimalist type shoe, it means you're wearing something for protection. However, the foot is designed to move a little bit more naturally than if you didn't have your shoe on. So, and what's kind of interesting is Sam Snead also said, like, whenever his swing was out of rhythm at all, and you'll see a lot of players actually say this. They say to play 3 holes with your shoes off, and it will immediately get your golf swing back in balance. So, and we see that like in powerlifting and things like that, where you'll see like if you take your shoes off and you do a deadlift or a squat, you definitely have a way better perception of the lift with your shoes off. So now you may lift more weight with like a weightlifting type shoe on for some other reasons, but as far as like just perception and centering of your body, you'll see that you definitely will have better perception with the shoe off. So I was introduced to a pair of golf shoes by Dr. Panther called True Links. So True Links are a brand of golf shoe that, he's really recommending to our golfers and things like that, where the foot is actually doing more what it's naturally designed to do. And, he's had a lot of success with that company. And, of course, other companies are kind of following suit. But I definitely think from what we've seen, the True Links is probably doing it better than any other golf shoe at this point. But I'm sure, that will all change as time goes on.
Sure, yeah.
As far as like, what would you recommend for a golfer? It would depend on the foot type. So, for example, if somebody had a really stiff foot, so the articulations of the foot are really stiff, they would probably be better served wearing a more flexible golf shoe. Or if somebody had a really, overly pronated foot or flat foot, perhaps you would want, more support. But, even in saying that, though, I don't always agree with those rules. I don't think you can, 100% say, make those statements. It kind of depends definitely on the golfer. But anyways, I hope that answers your question.
Sure. No, I think the best answer is that it definitely depends. Everybody's an individual, and it depends on what they have going on. First and foremost, I think it's an important point that you made is make sure that you don't have discomfort or pain with your shoe. You do have to walk a lot. You're moving around, you're shifting your weight. So if there's any irritation, first of all, even if it's the greatest shoe in the world, but it hurts, it's not going to do you any good. But I have seen Dr. Panther, recommending the True Links wear and talking about those shoes, and so I've been very intrigued to hear more about them. I haven't had any experience with them or tried any on yet, but I've heard really, really good things. I know a couple of the guys on tour are definitely loving them and wearing them a lot. So just kind of want to get
the other interesting thing is that besides it being like a minimalist shoe, they have what's called zero drop, which means you see it now like in running shoes where, like if you see a traditional running shoe, you'll see that the heel is elevated higher than the forefoot or the front of the foot. And with zero drop, basically the whole foot is on the same plane. So why that potentially could matter in the golf swing is if we have more of a heel rise, then the center of gravity is obviously brought more forward. So, and like could produce more of like a clawing reaction of the toes and things like that. So there is some implications for that. I mean, it's tough to say like how far you're going to go with your client as far as changing this stuff. The guys on the tour, of course, because they have such great awareness. But we always say, like, for example, if someone's got a stiff spine, and if you're a 1 handicapper and I free up your spine, it's like putting new tires on a Ferrari. You can just immediately use that new motion. If you're a 20 handicapper, it's nice to have a freely movable spine, but it doesn't mean as much. So we probably got the same thing at play with the feet. So we'd hate to have our recreational golfer go out and blow, $300 on a pair of golf shoes that at the end of the day may not matter too much. But if you're working with a really high level golfer, you might want to start to explore some of these other things. But one thing I've learned with putting orthotics in a professional baseball player, like pitchers, is they're very finicky. So like you put an orthotic in a baseball cleat on a major league pitcher, like it can start to like alter some other things, and that might be, psychosomatic. It might be all in their head, or it may just absolutely be because of biomechanics. But for whatever the reason, it's different and it's like not producing a great result. So, if you're going to make a change in the shoe, you want to be sure that, you're pretty confident that that's exactly what they need, because it can definitely alter some things. Like I always say, it's nothing to monkey around with,
Yeah, I think you definitely need to kind of decide what you want to do. And, if you do put an orthotic in your shoe, make sure you kind of gradually work your way into it and don't just, throw it in and go 100 miles an hour, because we've seen those issues too.
Oh my God, that's such a good point. And then like if you do have an orthotic, we take the orthotic out of the shoe, put it on the ground, have them stand on the orthotic, and then we have a pretty good idea of like, are they preserving that tripod that I spoke of before? That's my criteria for an orthotic. When they're standing on the orthotic, are they equally loading that tripod? And what you'll find is a lot of orthotics will be, overly posted or overly corrected, or they, totally give in to the weight of the body, and they're essentially just a glorified arch support that's doing nothing, So honestly, it's hard to find good orthotics. It really is.
Yeah, all really good things to think about. And I think, the audience has gotten a good idea of, what are some of the things that they need to take a look at. And it's probably something they haven't really paid much attention to as far as their foot health. So all of you guys out there listening, just take this, hopefully I'll put up some links to some of these different activities and exercises, but, take some of the tests that Dr. Winchester had, the squat test, the single leg balance, and see how you fare. And we'll have some other things on the show notes for you guys to kind of test out, and the stretches and everything. But Dr. Brett, I want to thank you for kind of enlightening us in some of these different areas. And before you go, I got to ask you a couple last questions. First, probably the most important one on the 18 Strong podcast is, are you a Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore fan?
Happy Gilmore.
All right. And then I know you guys have a lot of stuff going on at Winchester Spine and Sports. So what are you guys most excited about in the upcoming months?
We're hosting a seminar. The first rollout is the DNS Golf Seminar. We're very, very excited about that. So that will take place in September in Chesterfield. And we got, people who treat golfers for a living, professionals from all over the world coming to see this. And DNS is short for Dynamic Neuromuscular Stabilization. And it's basically a lot of stuff that we're kind of talking about and how it affects the golf swing. And those people who don't activate the right stereotype for the muscles in the foot, there's some, real interesting strategies we can use to start to turn those muscles on. And that whole technique system revolves around that. And, we're kind of really interested on what's going on with the feet. There's a researcher, a biomechanist out of University of Virginia named Max Prokepi, and we're starting to, start researching the foot, what exactly is going on with the golf swing, with the feet. So, we're kind of in our infancy in it, but I think, we're going to really start to, uncover some of the things that are going on and maybe some of the myths that are out there as far as what the feet are doing during the golf swing.
Yeah, I can't wait for that DNS seminar, which is, for those of you that aren't familiar with St. Louis, Chesterfield is kind of an extension of St. Louis. And for any of you fitness professionals, physical therapists, chiropractors, if you're anywhere in, basically there's going to be people coming from outside the States even for this. I definitely recommend that you come. And I know Brett's going to be there speaking. Max was actually a guest on the show several episodes ago. I'll link to his episode in the show notes. Talked some great stuff about just the mechanics of the swing. But I know that it's going to be a great seminar. I can't wait to see what you guys have and learn a lot more about the DNS and how that's going to affect and help clients and all the golfers out there. And we'll be able to put a lot more of that information out on the 18 Strong podcast. All right, Brett, any last advice for the 18 Strong listeners before we let you go?
No, I would just say, for those who are treating golfers or treating patients, I would just say, just like when we train our chiropractors or physical therapists or, whoever, take the shoes off. Like Sam Snead said with the golfer, he said, the reason the feet are so overlooked is because they're covered up. It's so easy, for example, to look at a golf grip and say, oh, that's wrong or that's not right because it's so exposed and just out there. The feet are covered up. So, you have to sometimes, take the shoes and socks off to see what's going on there. And then we always kind of jokingly say it's good to have a healthy foot fetish. So you want to kind of get enamored with the foot like we are from a biomechanical standpoint, not a creepy standpoint. And I just want to thank you, Jeff. We love the podcast. We think you're doing a wonderful job, and we cherish the friendship, and keep up all the good work.
I really, really appreciate it. And we will definitely set up a date to come down and do some filming and put together some good resources for the 18 Strong community.
Peace and love.
All right. Thanks, Brett.
Yep. Bye now.
Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Dr. Brett. And as you can see, the foot is really a very complex piece of the body, and there's a lot to it, and there's a lot more to it than I think most of us put stock in. And so, looking at how your foot functions and how you stand on your foot and what your balance is like, your proprioception, all that stuff comes into play for your golf game. And yes, it may not be the one thing that changes your game. As Dr. Brett said, if you're a 20 handicapper, maybe that's not the most important thing to be changing is your golf shoe and the support that you're looking for in your feet, but it's another piece to the puzzle. And I think that because we are all individuals who are walking or on our feet a lot or, just in shoes all the time, it's very important to see what kind of health we have in our feet and what we can do to make them stronger, make them react better, make sure the joints are moving. So again, I'm going to have a lot of links in the show notes to some of the different videos that Dr. Winchester talked about, so you guys can do some of these things, some of these different stretches, because as I mentioned, I find a lot of dysfunction in people's ankles, feet, and that transfers into gross motor movements, lack thereof, I should say. So the inability to move your ankle properly makes it much harder for you to squat, which makes it much harder for you to get strong and more powerful. So taking all these things into account, you want to make sure that you're doing the right things to preserve your feet, make sure they're working properly and getting stronger. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we will catch you next week with another great interview. We've got a couple really, really good guests coming up, so stay tuned to the 18 Strong podcast. Don't forget to train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.